This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to the Linux Action Show, episode 332. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to update the folks on the big show today?
Absolutely.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we're going to deep dive into Shellshock, that bash vulnerability that everybody's talking about, what it is, how it works, why it's a problem, how widespread and a big of a deal it really is, and how large projects like Fedora are responding to it. That's why Matthew Miller, the lead of the Fedora project, will be joining us today to go into all of that. He's one of the voices out there that's really been putting some rationality and explanation behind Shellshock, so I can't wait to talk to him. And not only that, I got a little pic. He's kind of a handsome guy.
Yeah, he's got a little snapshot there.
Handsome-looking guy here. So he'll be joining us on the show later today to talk about Shellshock. We got a bit of a Shellshock theme, but of course, it's not just Shellshock. In the news, we'll give a pretty deep look at Gnome 3.14, which came out this week. We got it loaded on a machine right here, and we'll give you a little walkthrough and some of the highlights about that. Also, have you heard of Notch? No, not the guy that made Minecraft, but the project that wants to replace Systemd. And guess what?
Oh.
They're actually being rational about it.
No kidding.
So
well, they got a cool name.
We're going to talk about that, plus an update on multi-touch support in Wayland, and a little look at Ubuntu 14.10, which just dropped its final beta before it gets released next month. So we'll have a little preview of that.
Good
and then,
stuff.
of course, it's our picks. And in the feedback segment, stick around. If you're going to Ohio Linux Fest, we have something we need to tell you about, and we'll do that in the feedback segment. And we'll do an update on the Linux Action Show limited run fall jacket in the feedback segment as well. But, Matt, it is our pick segment here on the Linux Action Show.
Oh, yes.
Every now and then, Matt, something really cool happens in the week that we can use as our runs Linux. And this week, you might have noticed that Linux was powering India's first arrival to the red planet. Have you heard about this?
That is crazy. I did hear about this. This is really awesome.
India made history today by being the first and only country in the world to send a spacecraft to Mars in its first attempt. The country also made history because it did it for $71 million, which everybody is quoting is less than it cost to make the movie Gravity. But if you look closely on the mission control screens there, Matt, you'll see a little Red Hat logo.
I was going to say that looks awful familiar, and I really like their price point. I feel like they,
$74 million.
Yeah.
Well, so I was going to actually ask you about that. Is that something you want to be cheap on? I don't know if that's true, Matt.
First of all, it's not manned, so you're not. No one can hear you screaming.
Okay, all right.
You got the non-human factor in there, so that's good. But
all right.
I think at the end of the day, they obviously
your first
got a
attempt,
result.
right?
They got a result,
right?
They got a result for that price point.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, boom.
All right, well, I grabbed a CNN clip of the coverage. I don't know if we're going to see any Linux in this clip, but let's see if we can spot it. All right, I'm not sure if we will, because it's just kind of packaged together, but we'll do a little spying here, a little I Spy.
Seconds to go.
Wait, where's my VLC?
There we go.
India became the first in the world to successfully reach Mars's orbit on its first attempt. The country's Prime Minister Narendra Modi celebrating the occasion.
History has been created today. We have dared to reach out into the unknown and have achieved the near impossible.
Launched in November last year, it's Asia's first, joining the league of only the US, Russia, and the European Space Agency. It's also the cheapest interplanetary mission ever, costing $74 million, a fraction of NASA's Maven, which reached Mars orbit last week and cost 9 times more.
Ooh.
Modi recently boasted it cost less to send the orbiter to Mars than it did to make the Hollywood movie Gravity. Scientists say the primary aim is to test India's engineering capabilities, the next step to study the red planet.
There it is. That was it right there.
Boy,
that was the Linux there at the end.
God, I got to tell you, that really... So, future stuff that we're wanting to do in space, I mean, should we maybe be working together with these guys, because clearly they seem to be onto something.
I think the better approach would be is if we could all fight and compete and then work on things separately and not share.
Yeah, because why would we maybe have God, I'm just saying they're doing it for a great sum of money. They're able to, obviously, different venue, different country, different everything. Sure,
I can tell you where they save money. Look at how old this install of Red Hat Enterprise Linux is. What is that? There, I mean, geez Louise.
Yeah, that's it's got like game running in the background or something.
I'm just not so sure about that, man. I don't know.
But I wouldn't. Congrats
to India and all of our viewers and listeners in India who are celebrating.
Very cool.
And
that's a big accomplishment. I mean, really huge.
Way to show us how to do it at a much lower budget than the U.S. did. Hey, speaking of saving money and speaking of taking care of your own business, let's talk about our first sponsor this week, and that's DigitalOcean. Why don't you head over to DigitalOcean right now, because DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. And you can get started in less than 55 seconds, probably a lot less than that if you're really quick. And pricing plans start at only $5 per month for 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And DigitalOcean has data center locations all over the world in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and even in London. I love that they're backed by SSDs, that they use KVM for their virtualization on top of Tier 1 hardware connected to some of the best bandwidth in the world, and their interface is so simple and intuitive, and power users can replicate this bad boy on a larger scale with their straightforward API. This is such a great system. And the other thing that's really good about DigitalOcean, I mean, you might have noticed they jumped on Linux. They jumped on SSDs way before everybody else. They realized that it's not just about having amazing hardware. It's not about the great technology that powers that. It's not about incredible disk I/O. It's not about great bandwidth. It's also about an incredible user interface matched with great customer service and people who are dialed into the needs of their users. That's why they're rolling out CoreOS, IPv6, private networking, and also a comprehensive post on how to check to see if your DigitalOcean droplet is affected by the Shellshock bash vulnerability. They have a great post over here on what you can do to get yourself either updated, checked, etc. And this is what I really respect about DigitalOcean is they're dialed into this stuff, you guys. That's why they worked directly with the CoreOS project to make CoreOS happen on DigitalOcean. And that's why they're doing this. That's why they work with Docker. They're all in on all of this stuff. And you can too by going over to DigitalOcean.com. And we have a promo code that gets you a $10 credit so you can try out DigitalOcean for free for 2 months.
Sweet.
That ain't bad.
That is not bad at all.
That is not bad. If you use the promo code LAST September, LAS September, one word, lowercase, because it's like the command line, the bash shell command line, lowercase, one word, LAST September, $10 credit when you check out over at DigitalOcean.com.
That's right.
Check them out, guys. Go make a droplet. Go deploy yourself. Oh, I don't know, OwnCloud, WordPress, BitTorrent, Sync, GitLab.
Anything you want.
The LAMP stack. Whatever you want. Make it possible over at DigitalOcean.com. And a big thanks to DigitalOcean. And last September, we'll get you that $10 credit. Thanks to all you who support our sponsors.
What's great about them is if they don't have something already set up to where it's like push button ready, then they've got a tutorial to tell you how to do it.
Oh, totally.
That's what I love. It's like with BitTorrent Sync. It's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I got a tutorial. Just follow this.
Yes,
you're done.
Absolutely. All right, Matt. So speaking of Shellshock, I wanted our desktop spotlight this week to be a way you could go check yourself if you're worried about it. Honestly, we don't want you to come away from this show being totally freaked out about this problem. But we know it might be something that's piqued your interest. And I was curious. I wanted to test things like my NAS, because I have a Synology NAS.
It's the things you don't think about, things that are immediately in front of you.
So I want to direct you over to Shellshocker.net. This is an open source project, and it's a bash vulnerability tester. It'll give you a series of different ways you can test yourself. You can just plug a URL in there if you'd like. It'll give you bash syntax you can run. It'll give you different examples and the kind of results you should expect. It'll give you the commands to update your Linux distro if you're on Fedora, Ubuntu, Arch, right there. It'll tell you how to build it from source if you want to just replace bash from source. If you're on OS 10 and Apple still hasn't responded with a fix, they claim you're safe, but of course, if you've turned on any kind of Unix service like SSH, then you're not
and
safe.
According to NBC, Apple's got a bug called Bash. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, thank you to the subreddit for finding that. That was really great. Awesome. So they've also got a Shellshock API, so that's all really good. Yes. You're like, okay, Chris, that sounds like a good way to check myself, but here's the best part, y'all. They've also put all of the code up on GitHub, so you can go check it out if you want. And you can also do pull requests. They're open to that, too. In fact, they're asking for it. So it's Shellshocker.net. It's an open source project to check yourself, any of your own gear, or remotely check a site, too. You can plug a URL in there and go check it. And there's a lot of these popping up. Well, but be careful, because not all of them are open code.
And, make sure you can actually find out what it's doing before you go and execute something random. But, remember to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Before you wreck yourself. solved.
Just saying.
So they've had, look at that, 41,000 total tests to date, and they found 765 of those 41,000 to be vulnerable.
Ooh.
I like that they're putting that there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That kind of insinuates, hey, you might want to do this.
They also have a little fix script, which is funny if you think about it. They have a little fix script where you can pull it down with curl.
Fine, irony.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It is interesting to see how the community responds to this. Yeah. Okay, Matt. We've talked about FreeNAS on this show on Linux Unplugged. We recently had a great open media review by Wimpy and others in the Mumble Room, and I came across something. I think it was submitted by the subreddit, although I honestly don't remember because I tagged it a couple of weeks ago and meant to talk about it. It's called Rockstore.
Rockstore, not
Rockstore,
okay.
and it is a file server that is powered by Linux and Btrfs. That's kind of its claim to fame. It's a Linux-based NAS server, they say, is packed with features. Cost-effective to manage, smart and efficient solution, it provides greater value, they say, and it also supports backups. Now, I'm just spotlighting this week because we haven't tried it yet, and this is kind of maybe my call out to the community here to say, what have you found with this? Have you tried this out? And are you comfortable using Btrfs for this? That's also something else. Yes, it's got a pretty decent looking user interface. It also has a command line component to it, so you can, like FreeNAS, you can either go through the web or at the console. I like that a lot. It sets up pooled storage. It'll combine your disks together, all using Btrfs's fancy features. You get your graphs, all that kind of reporting stuff. It looks like Rockstore, Rockstor, Rockstore, could be pretty awesome.
Well, it sounds like it's a Rockstore is living a rock star lifestyle, and that you live for today and you don't worry about your data tomorrow. It's okay. It's okay. You're having a good time now. You're enjoying your data. You
Nicely
don't care.
done, sir. Nicely
so
done.
I'm just saying.
All right.
Rockstar.
Come on. I got.
Now that being said, Rockstars have they're not all bad. So who knows?
Here's a feature that FreeNAS should try adding. You can remove broken disks.
Oh, hey, that
would be something, but they're still waiting for, I think, full ZFS support there. But I'm sure they'll get that eventually.
Replacing band members. I mean,
that is actually a serious problem with FreeNAS that I've run into, and it looks like this has it solved. I like that it is basically it's a FreeNAS competitor with a fresh UI, which FreeNAS has a good UI. This looks maybe a notch above it.
The fact you can remove disks is kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, that's nice. That is really nice. Resize pools on the fly, delete a pool on the fly. That's cool. Redundancy options. I mean, I'm digging everything I read, but I don't know if anybody's tried it out there. And I don't really have like a need to build a new file server.
Right.
So I'm not going to try one out right away. But
it might be kind of fun as like a demo setup, just to kind of just throw stuff at it, see what happens.
If people are interested, I would throw one on a rig here, and we could put our media on it for a couple of weeks and put it through its paces. So if you are, leave a comment in the feedback thread over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And every week we put a feedback thread in there for this episode that we've recorded. And in there, we try to have all of like the commentary specific to this episode in there. General topics, you can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and mail in the Linux Action Show questions, topical ideas, things like that. But if it's something specific like, hey, you got this fact wrong, which we like getting corrections, or when you ask this question, the best place for that would be the feedback thread at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. So if you've tried Rockstore, or would like us to try it, either one, let us know, and we'll consider it.
And if you have clever parallels that you want to share, that's cool too.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, Matt, let's do the news.
The news in this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Last.ting.com. That's where you want to go. LAS.ting.com. Let them know you rock support for the Linux Action Show, and go check them out, and you'll get $25 off your first Ting device. And if you've already got a Ting device or one that's compatible you can bring with you, they'll give you a $25 service credit, which you'll probably pay for more than your first month. What is Ting? It's mobile that makes sense. Here's why I love Ting. I've got it right here on the Nexus 5, which I have trust. You know what? Also, by the way, Matt, Android L is crazy.
Oh, you've been
on the Ting network right now. It is craziness.
That whole battery action.
I got the Nexus 5 with Android L because I'm nuts. Matt's over there rocking the Note 2 because he's nuts. Hey, look at that. Boom. Bam. And we both have these on the Ting network, and you know what we love about it? No contract. No early termination fee, and we only pay for what we use. Right. And what's great about that is Ting's all about saving you money. In fact, up on their blog right now, ting.com/blog, go to last.ting.com. They've got a post on how you can now use the new Google Hangouts outbound calling to get free calls on your Ting device to save even more money.
How wild is that, right?
This is literally a blog post that's going to cost them money. And they want to save you money. And you only pay for what you use because Ting takes your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes, and they add them all up at the end of the month. Whatever bucket you fall into, that's all you pay. No contract means you can end when you need to, which I think is amazing. And they have a fantastic dashboard that lets you manage all of it. And they also have no-hold customer service if you ever run into any problems.
Good stuff.
It's extremely good stuff, Matt. And the other thing that's extremely great is what a bunch of Android enthusiasts they are, and just mobile enthusiasts too. I think they have some. I think I saw an iOS pick or two on their blog. Yeah. Kyra's here, Matt, with an app pick. Are you ready to see what we got?
I'm ready.
All right,
looking for a hassle-free way to quickly send a large file? I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's App of the Week.
I am actually.
WeTransfer lets you share up to 10 gigabytes of photos, videos, and any other files on your smartphone without having to use up your precious cloud storage. Simply open the app, select your pictures and videos, and email them to a friend. That's it. To send another type of file, just share it with WeTransfer. You never have to make an account or add any personal details, ever. Once uploaded, your friends will receive an email with a download link inside. WeTransfer is completely free and available for Android and iOS. Both links are in the description below. We've got a lot of these quick app videos on the Ting channel. Hit the subscribe button to keep up with our weekly video releases.
You can also follow them on Twitter, TingFTW. They're on Google Plus as well. They're also on Reddit if you want to check out the Ting subreddit. And go to last.ting.com to get started. They've got more devices than ever, including now the iPhone 5S, some of the best Galaxy lines, a bunch of really great devices. When you go to last.ting.com, they'll take $25 off the device that you then own. You're not getting tricked into paying for a bunch of minutes and megabytes you may or may not use. Only pay for what you actually use, the way the mobile industry should actually be, the way it should work, and Ting's making that happen, and you can too by going to last.ting.com.
Telling you.
Matt, the big story this week, the big story. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. So we were about to talk about Gnome.3.14, and during our break, it locked out there. All right, here, I'll unlock it for you, Matt. All right?
Yeah, passwords. That whole keyboard thing, I tried bashing it with my head.
You know that password.
I know that one.
You know that one.
Yeah, that one's a given.
Yeah, that one is. So there it is. There is the new Gnome 3.14 you're running right there on a Fedora Live ISO, which we have a link to in the show notes if you guys want to try it out. You can just go play with it right now. And Web Update had one of the better write-ups about the new features of Gnome 3.14. I'm crazy excited about Gnome 3.14. It is honestly. It's now they're getting into the polish phase, and I'm getting excited about that.
It's really cleaning up nicely. It's kind of like when you take somebody. It's like, oh, that could be cool, and you throw them in the shower and you bathe them a couple times. It really came out washed clean and fun.
Yes, exactly. And part of that is because they rewrote the Edwadia theme, large components of it. There's new animations throughout, like the cursor when it's thinking. There's a new spinner. Also, Matt, click on that activities. Click on the activities there, and then click on the All Apps button. There's one of the new animations they've included to try to show you where it's at. If you click on the folder in the bottom right there, it'll do a new a new population, which it looks pretty good, right?
It looks really nice.
Pull up the Software Center. Now, it's not populated. It's the...
okay.
It's right. Yep. One more up. One more up. Yep, there you go.
There we go.
That is now, it's kind of empty right now.
Yeah.
Because this is just...
You got installed, which I like the fact that they separate that out. You got your updates.
And that's where all the updates will be managed. And you can see they've laid it out, so they're going to have featured categories along the top there, or featured apps, and then you have your featured categories below that. Looks pretty good, right?
Looks really
sharp.
Nice.
And you see there's a smooth animation when you close the window.
Exactly. I close this out. It's like, boop.
Yep.
Just vanishes real nice and pretty.
And that's under VMware. So it's looking even better when you have it on actual hardware. So after 6 months of development, Gnome 3.14 was released this week with a lot of new changes like multi-touch gestures for both system and applications, reworked default theme, new animations, as well as various enhancements for the applications in Gnome. Kind of excited about a lot of these things. One of the most important new features is the system-wide multi-touch gestures, which we'll get into more in a bit. Producer Eric Witten took it for a drive, and he's kind of done a write-up of all of the different state of multi-touch on Linux desktops. He's got a laptop. He's not even doing it on a tablet.
Wow.
Yeah. With Windows 8, all of these Windows laptops are adding this sort of like they're just bolting on touch support. And it's kind of like, well, now if we have it, how does it actually work under Linux? Like it's kind of like when they started adding 3D to TVs. It's like, okay, I suppose if my TV's just going to come with 3D, maybe I'll watch a couple of 3D movies from time to time.
Of course.
So it's kind of like with touch, maybe from time to time I will try it out. Well, Eric said in GNOME 3.14, which isn't stable in any distro yet, so keep that in mind, but it will be hitting like Arch repos soon, and it'll be coming in Fedora 21. He says it's pretty good. He says that it's probably one of the best he's seen yet, which I think is pretty encouraging. And I have a video in the show notes that demos some of the multi-touch stuff. In fact, why not? I'll play it for you.
Yeah.
You're curious to see how it works here, man. I don't know. This was posted up by World of Gnome on G+. And, of course, it's got a great rockin'... yeah, right?
That's some music there. Yeah.
So here's edge swipes. So watch the fingers. You see he pulls up to get the notification tray. Pulling from the side to get all the activities.
Interesting.
So here's how you can pull down the overview. He's doing a finger pinch.
Oh,
and it gets,
okay. So the purple out's
screen.
representative of fingers.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And now he's swiping up to switch to the next desktop space. 4 fingers to switch between desktop spaces. Switching apps in a workspace. 2, 3 fingers. He's holding them down. You see how he's...
Oh, that's wild.
Isn't that kind of... And then the 4th fingers he's using to toggle through them.
It's very kung fu.
It's kind of... It's fascinating to see it roll. And I, again, not super hot on this kind of stuff, but if I did get a laptop that had touchscreen at some time, it would be nice just to have that in there.
I could see some applications to where, especially if it's one of those laptops that double as like a tablet, absolutely. I could totally see that being useful.
Let's try a little experiment here.
Okay.
So, Matt, you'll have to man the keyboard for me since it's over there. I'm going to bring up the file manager, and I don't know if this is going to be doable, but I think if you do Control and then Shift and then I, that'll bring up the new GTK inspector. Well, no. Control. Try it again. Try Control, Shift, I. No, I see it just selects. I don't. See, I haven't been able to get it up either.
You know, I'm not doing the keyboard right. Apparently. Wow.
But anyways, it might have been remapped on that machine.
Oh, it might have been.
Anyways, this brings up that new GTK inspector we talked about recently that lets you dig in and kind of figure out how stuff is working. You got the new improved support for Wi-Fi hotspots when connecting to a Wi-Fi portal that requires authentication. Gnome's a lot smarter about it. They've improved the geolocation framework. Sharing for WebDev, DLNA, and VNC now remembers what state you want them in. This is super, super cool. So if you go to work, you don't necessarily want your VNC turning on and your WebDAV and your DLNA.
Right.
And then when you bring your laptop home, Network Manager now will be smart to be, you're on your home network, and it'll turn that stuff on for you. So you now have network-based sharing, which is much...
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things to where you get it, and it's like, how the hell did I live without this?
Yeah. And Wayland improvements for all of you running Wayland, including keyboard config, touchscreen support, drag and drop support, full contextual menus, tooltips, high DPI support, as well as resizing windows and moving them.
It's getting there.
That's something, right, Matt? Also, the Mucket did a great write-up of GNOME 3.14 on his Arch box. Better multi-monitor support. The Software Center now comes to Arch, thanks to the package kit work that's been done for Arch. The Weather Center has the new Blender-powered animations and looks super cool.
Nice.
He says, in a nutshell, this is over on the Mucket. He says, in a nutshell, GNOME 3.14 is really nice, especially even coming from somebody who is a Plasma user. I see myself spending some time with GNOME and enjoying things like online integration, integrated with OwnCloud, which I've integrated this machine over here with my OwnCloud account, so I don't have anything in there. But if we go into Settings, and then we go Online Accounts, you can see I currently have it connected.
Nice.
I guess it turned off. So that's what's happening on GNOME 3.12.
Okay.
It's early days, man.
Early days. You got to sign back in.
You know what? During the break, I'll sign back in and see if it works.
Very awesome.
Because I have such a crazy password, I don't want to type it in right now.
Right.
But it is crazy great when it does. It works on my Bonobes. So I don't, but it doesn't work on any of my other machines.
Interesting.
And he says it was really good, even from the standpoint of a KDE user, which I thought was interesting.
That's an interesting perspective. If you're winning them over into where they're going to give it a thumbs up, that's kind of a nice nice problem. Yeah.
So GTK 3.14, which is powering GNOME 3.14, also includes a bunch of support for Wayland 1.6. We mentioned the touch support, a drag and drop, and now GNOME Classic mode working under Wayland with GTK 3.14. So it's really looking pretty good. And you can go download the live ISO that we're playing with here. If you go to the show notes, we'll have a 3.14 ISO image for you to go grab.
Good stuff.
Based on Fedora 21.
Yes.
Really, really excited about 3.14. It's
really shaping up nicely.
I put it on a test machine.
Yeah.
I turned on Arch. I turned on the testing repo and pulled it all down, and all my extensions broke.
Oh,
the Mucket actually has a workaround for that, where you just turn off version checking. But other than that, solid. Everything works.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've run into with Gnome is extensions are kind of hit and miss.
Yeah. And I've got quite a bit that I use.
I've got some key ones that are kind of like, no,
I compare it down to like 3 or 4. But
yeah.
Like my dock broke.
Oh, see, it's little things.
And look,
like
and
that.
how can I can't watch the Bitcoin price tumble when my extensions break. How can I watch Bitcoin? What am I going to do, man? I gotta.
Yeah, you got to be like, oh, that's going to suck. Yeah.
All right, so I called it Notch earlier. It's actually Nosh. Have you heard of it? It's Nosh.
Nosh.
This is interesting. It's not a full-on like let's take on systemd, rah 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 rah.
Right.
But this is more like a pragmatic like acceptance that systemd is a thing and that we don't. Last week I got upset. I got upset because what we witnessed was the wrong way to do it. This week I want to show you what I think is maybe not an equivalent but a right way to go about this. So Nosh was originally intended for use on BSDs and to fill gaps for BSD users and herd users that didn't have an option for whatever reason to use something like LaunchD, which is what BSD's all in on. That's the Mac thing.
Right.
Systemd or Upstart, which is Ubuntu's thing. And they wanted what other daemon tool family systems provided, including inter-service dependencies, what a concept, Solaris-like targets, milestones, and migration paths from systemd units to things like so you can take something from systemd and move it over to a BSD system.
Right. No, that makes sense.
They frame it as for people who are so upset by systemd, they want to bail and move to something else, but they want to bring their scripts with them. They said it should be suitable for filling the gap caused by the systemd tool being not portable from the Linux kernel since it's known not to work properly on BSD, and therefore they think it should also be a viable alternative for Debian KFreeBSD. For compatibility reasons, they will provide a mechanism for converting systemd unit files to their service files, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And for compatibility purposes, they will implement the systemctl command and syntaxes, so that way you can still use the same commands you use on systemd to stop and start your services and restart them and get reports like that.
Nice. There, hey.
And the way they're approaching it is it's more about providing an alternative, providing compatibility, and providing a path to move away. But also, like they said, still offer some of the things like dependency resolution and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that they're saying here's the reason why you might care, and that's cool. That even if it isn't for me, I love the fact they're addressing why they exist rather than just soiling their panties. That's kind of
calling
a plus.
Names.
Calling names and having a hissy fit. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So something that won't be running systemd is Ubuntu 14.10. Here, I'm going to summarize all of the new stuff in Ubuntu 14.10 for you starting now.
Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Oh, you forgot the crickets.
Oh, actually, I do have crickets. You know what? That would be perfect, wouldn't it? Here we go. It has a new... Actually, there are... there's 12 new wallpapers. Not a new default wallpaper. In fact, they haven't even changed the wallpaper from Ubuntu.
And why were they running a Linux Deepin software manager in that screenshot?
I don't know.
It's kind of like, that says a lot, right?
I know.
There.
I scrolled down because I was like, I don't know why they're showing that. So here's what's new since 14.04. Linux kernel 3.16. Unity 7.3.1, which is a point release, so we got Unity 7.3 in 14.04. So it's bug fixes. I don't know if you can even see a difference.
So would we say this is a polished bug fix release or just a bug fix release?
LibreOffice has gotten updated to 4.3.1.
It feels like an update bug fix.
Firefox 32 is new. Yeah, this is...
it feels like a bug fix release. Here's updates, I guess.
Here's what Joey said on OMG Ubuntu. This is, I thought his summary... he says, with all hands on polishing up the RTM builds for Ubuntu for phones ahead of the first handset launch before the year's end, which I'm sure is very true. Little attention has been given to bringing the new features to the desktop. And then in his own words, bold and italicized, there's not even a new default desktop wallpaper. And down in the comments, and by the way, we got download links if you guys want to check all this out. I mean, look, if you're an Ubuntu user, this is just going to be an iterative version of Ubuntu that'll be great. Yeah. In the comments down here, they talk about, I can't remember if it was Joey or somebody else, that in all of their years of covering Ubuntu, they've never had a harder time trying to figure out what the hell to talk about for a release.
Well, yeah.
What the hell do they talk about?
That's kind of a thing. I mean, even if they did nothing other than the bug fixes and the updated software, which whoop-de-doo, it's a 0.1 thing if you ask me, whatever. At the very least, I don't know, maybe skin the crappy software manager to look less crappy. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I feel like there is like little UI tweaks,
just
or
anything.
Maybe make the top bar look like it's not GTK1, or like just little things you could do.
Yeah.
Rev the theme a little bit so it doesn't look like it's.
I mean, I'm not looking for anything bleeding edge with it. It's Ubuntu. It's what it is. It's stable. That's great.
That's just
whatever.
it. I guess I wonder what is even the point of them? What are they even working? What's the point? Just use 1404. I guess it's 1404 with some newer stuff. That's what it is.
That's what it feels like. And why not just do a point release to that?
And I just don't get why this is a distro model that makes sense anymore. Like, what are they working so hard for? And why are we doing it like this? This seems like a really dumb way to do this.
I have no problem with them. I mean, okay, so you want to do this. This is totally cool. Especially if you didn't break anything, because that's always an awesome thing, guys. If you didn't break anything, that's awesome. But why not just little things like wallpapers, icons, God, I don't know. Skin something, throw up maybe a troll image somewhere. I don't know. Just
at the end of the day, I mean, in theory, it should be a pretty smooth upgrade for those of you on 1404. And if you're solidly happy with your 1404 installation, this should just be more of the same stuff.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're getting the new software, which kind of just...
I mean, you're getting all the other stuff.
It just kind of points out how dated the PPA concept is, but whatever.
Well, and like for some of this stuff, you probably already have PPAs for, because you're not going to want to sit around on Fire. I mean, I don't know. Firefox and Chrome are updated, and I honestly, you know what? I seriously don't get it. I really don't.
I get it in that I have certain machines that I just want rock solid, stable. I don't care if they're a million years old, as long as they're not security vulnerabilities and they're patched. I'm fine with that. So I get it from that perspective. But if you're going to bother with a new release that's not a point thing, I don't.
I mean, so what the chat room is saying is that you're going to get new kernel. You got maintenance updates to Unity. Here's my point: is that doesn't seem... See, these companies kill themselves for these 6-month cycles. It just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Yeah, and I mean, that's it legitimately. It's like, I'm not faulting them for updating this stuff, but I think this particular type of cycle, you kind of went overboard for a whole new release for really what amounted to just some new packages.
Should have been like SP1 to 1404.
I mean, maybe there's some huge bug fix thing we don't know of that needed to require something, or I don't know.
It's just
I'm throwing out.
Not really. It's just in maintenance mode while they work on the mobile stuff.
Whatever. So,
and this is why it bothers me, is because at the end of the day, the practical limit. Look where we've come from. Ubuntu's defining feature when Ubuntu launched was it was synced to GNOME releases. It was the way to get a new GNOME version. Was Ubuntu was your true and reliable way to ship a new GNOME, and they did it with a smart package selection, an orange theme, and some sexual kind of implications of people in circles that I was all in on. Now, fast forward to 2014, and now for a couple of releases in a row, Ubuntu is that version of Linux that never gets GNOME, the current version of GNOME. So in 14.10, you will not have GNOME 3.14. Now, of course, obviously, there are PPAs, which I have linked in the show notes that you can go grab and get it right now. We have covered a how-to recently on how to do this. So it is possible. But it is unfortunate that here we are, what used to make Ubuntu great, what used to define Ubuntu, is now, almost ironically, one of its bigger limitations. Now, and of course, this is how it happens. This is what, the schedules just didn't link up. Feature freeze is where 14.10 is at right now, so that means you're not going to get big stuff like GNOME 3.14.
Right.
Packages and APIs also wouldn't be introduced. An emphasis is placed on polish and bug fixing to ensure as stable as experience as possible, which you have to respect in some regard.
Let me stop you there. Okay, the emphasis on polish. Where's the polish?
I think
what's it certainly isn't visual.
No, I think it's and I'm not even joking. I think it's reverse polish. I think it's polished in the absence of doing anything. So because you didn't add anything new, you didn't mess anything new up. So it's reverse polish in the sense that you didn't add anything. Yeah. So therefore there's nothing that needs polish. So the ergo it has the same amount of polish it had before, which was polished, so you've polished it.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, of course, the feature freeze came in for 14.10 a month prior to the GNOME 3.14 stable, so not going to happen. It's a tight time frame that conspires against the Ubuntu GNOME team, making it impossible for them to include the latest GNOME stack. However, we have PPAs in the show notes.
I'll leave you guys with this, and this is kind of where I'm coming at it from. I have no problem with them just saying, hey, look, we're just adding a couple of little doohickeys and calling it a day. That's fine. I like a stable box for certain tasks. That's great. This really meets the needs for a lot of people. That's cool. I've got people I know specifically that use this. That's great. That's fine. What I have a problem with is that they did an entire release for this. It's just kind of like I think that's addressing a bigger issue, that sometimes an entire release isn't applicable to this situation.
Right. It seems like it could be like an update pack to 14.04.
Yeah. See, that would have felt more, so
genuine.
Exactly.
I feel like well, the reason why really I kind of feel like we're seeing a bit of a smokescreen here. Like, oh no, look at us, we're still pumping out updates, keeping you guys happy, but it's not really. It's not.
And so I would have been okay with saying, look, there's nothing back end wise that is for this particular type of release right now that we want to invest in. We're frozen. It's fine. That's okay. But at the very least, address the things that people are screaming for.
Or like go like OpenSUSE. To the chat, this is chat room suggestion. If you're no longer syncing to GNOME, you're no longer syncing to Plasma, or you never were, go 9 months like OpenSUSE and actually do something in that time.
Yeah, and that's just it. I know other people disagree with this. I don't care what you sync up to. I really could care less.
I have an idea. I just got it, Matt. Maybe what they could do is just release packages as they're updated in, like, I don't know what you call it, maybe like a tumbling type release, or
it's something that rolls down a hill,
like a raw roll kind of release, like
that would be
like a rolling hide, some kind of release
that would be,
where as you just get stuff done through your incredible testing system that we hear so much about, that's fully automated and constantly always improving, you run it through that, and then I don't know, you just release the package and then we just update.
And I will even address the fact, I know why they don't do this, and I've thought about this for a long time, and I know exactly why it is. Come in real close. It's called PR and marketing. That's I'm not being disingenuous.
There's buzz around a release.
There's buzz around a release. So I understand that. So my suggestion is to have a quasi-rolling release. Have some sort of situation where it's like, all right, look, we're a rolling release, but we have these like update packs that we can promote and make a big to-do about. That would be fine.
Sure.
That would be fine, because then you get your cake and eat it too, and life doesn't suck for Ubuntu users.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
And there you go. Yeah. Richard is your mother's brother.
There he is.
So if you'd like to try out GNOME 3.14 on your Ubuntu box, we have PPAs for stable, staging, and next to provide you backports of newer GNOME releases. We also recently did a how-to with producer Eric to do it on 14.04, which at this point, I guess where I'm getting at with this is if I was an Ubuntu user today.
Right.
I would be seriously considering just staying on 14.04, getting the latest GNOME on 14.04, because then I'm on an LTS release, and I'm already getting the latest Firefox and Chrome. I could get PPAs for the other couple of small updates they're doing, and I could have an LTS release. Well, and I don't know why I would update to 14.10.
Well, it's no longer even appealing from a stability point of view. I mean, I have a very bleeding edge box, which is Arch based, and then I have a Debian box, which I liked for my stable stuff. Ubuntu doesn't really address anything for me anymore, because I don't want to have to do new installations all the time. I want something rolling that I can just do. I don't have to fresh install. I don't want to deal with that anymore. That whole model just isn't working for me.
Matt, if you feel like chewing on some tech news, I'd like to point you to Tech Talk Today. I'd say it's a new show, but we've already got 66 on Monday. 65 episodes of Tech Talk Today in the can. It's a daily tech news show from a Linux user's perspective. We go on, we chew on the topics of the day from really the standpoint, instead of like the Silicon Valley, Google, Apple dominate the world spin, but from the perspective of community, open source, Linux users, DRM. How does, like, when these things come out, people don't talk about these issues and how they affect Linux users. We do here, and we have an open mumble room. And what's interesting about Tech Talk Today, and I hope more and more independent content creators go this route, is we're financing through Patreon. Our audience is our sponsor. They are the money we raise for our Tech Talk Today show over at patreon.com/today. The money there is invested dollar for dollar into every show on the network. It's how we hire contractors, how we replace lights when they burn out. If we have something expensive coming up, this helps us plan for that. It's how we budget and project maybe new shows that we can cover the R&D on before they're out and able to sustain revenue. That's where we get that funding from at patreon.com/today. And over there, we have different tier levels, and one of them is a Swag Club member. And I'm getting, you see where I'm going here, is at the Swag Club level, I wanted to make an announcement for those of you who are in the Swag Clubs for either Unfilter or Tech Talk Today. We have collected all of you that are in the different countries. There's 15 different countries that our Swag Club patrons are in. 15 different countries around the world, and my wife Angela has made a custom sticker with your flag.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That'll be coming to you. It's a vinyl sticker. They're being printed right now. They're really high quality. They're nice, and she custom made each sticker for your country for the 15 that we have patrons in the Swag Club members, and those will be going out soon. You'll hear more about that in Tech Talk today. Really excited about this. I think that's super going to be a really neat, unique thing, because I mean, look at this. Russia's on there.
I mean, that's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got all these various countries, and it's also interesting to see like how you can represent your country and Jupiter Broadcasting at the same time.
Maybe
so
that.
cool.
Yeah, I'm just saying you could put that on your laptop. So for those of you in our Swag Club levels, thank you very much. As we approach Ohio Linux Fest, I'm more appreciative than ever, and so we'll be sending out those stickers as a thank you.
Woo!
For your support. All right, Matt. We're about to get into our interview with Matthew Miller, and I want to mention that it doesn't come up in the interview because it wasn't really relevant, but in the show notes for the Shellshock section, there's a bunch of additional resources you can read up on that explain Shellshock in really good depth, but also give you a bunch of different code samples that you can test on yourself and other machines to see if you're vulnerable. So all of that is in the show notes. So there's a bunch of relevant information, like I mentioned in the interview with him at one point about something that Richard Stallman said.
Exactly.
I have a link to that in the show notes. So if you hear something in the interview and you're curious about it, check the show notes. There's lots of references in there. But Matt,
yes,
that's all the news for this week. We're about to chat with Matthew Miller, the head of the Fedora project, about Shellshock, this problem that is really all that everybody's talking about in the news, mainstream news and technical news. Before we jump into that, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System 76, creators of machines designed, born, created to run Ubuntu Linux. And as 14.10 gets near, all of you out there with a System 76 rig, you rest peacefully knowing that it's going to upgrade just fine. And the day 14.10 goes live, System 76 ships them. I love that about System 76.
It's like they just take care of it. You know it's going to work. They embrace it. They own it.
That's the investment you make when you get hardware that they selectively choose to know that they can support it over the long term. And that's a bit of a differentiator there, is they can pick hardware they know they can support, that they can make work for you. And that's why my Bonobos worked great for me for 2 years. System 76 has a bunch of great laptops and desktops you can check out. And then once you fall in love with that line of products, don't forget they also have a bunch of really great servers. System76.com. Go get yourself some hardware that works so you can stop fighting with your hardware and start playing with your Linux, and tell them the Linux Action Show sent you.
Good stuff.
Matthew, welcome back to the Linux Action Show. It's so good to have you here, back at home. I didn't expect to have you so soon on the show, but you've been doing some Shellshock coverage that I really enjoyed, so I wanted to get you on here. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I had fun last time.
Good.
Enjoy back being here again.
Well, so I, as everybody's trying to process this, how bad Shellshock is, what is Shellshock, and all of this, you posted a really good article up on the FedoraMagazine.org site saying Shellshock, how does it actually work? And I read through this and I thought, all right, this is the guy to have on the show, not only because you seem to have a pretty good grasp on the problem, but you can also give us some perspective on how a distro can respond to something like this.
True.
And future problems. So before we get all off on all of that and go too far into that, I want to make sure we don't lose some of the broader audience who's maybe still trying to wrap their head around what Shellshock is. So we got a question here from Oleg, 1905, in our subreddit. He said, can someone explain to me how the so-called Shellshock bug is a vulnerability? He says, I read up on it. I thought I understood the bug, but I'm not really quite clear on why it's an issue and how it works. And if a person already has access to setting my bash environment variables, isn't the game already lost? So can you kind of break down what Shellshock is and why it's a bug?
Yeah, so that exact thing, I think, is probably everybody's first reaction. Like, if you can set environment variables, and what should that do? Environment variables are just a key value data store somewhere. It doesn't execute code anywhere.
Right.
And so that's kind of why this is fascinating, because it's kind of a different kind of exploit than is common, and actually kind of why I was interested to write about it too, because it's something that's actually kind of different to explain than buffer overflows, where you're like, okay, now this is how memory is laid out in a computer and all that, and this is actually much higher level than that. So that kind of makes it fascinating as a different sort of thing. So it all comes down to this feature in Bash, which is implemented in a way that I think seemed clever at the time, but in retrospect, maybe it was a little bit too clever.
Okay.
So Bash, is a shell prompt thing, but it's also a basic programming language, and it's a scripting language, programming language. We can argue about the difference, but and one of the things it lets you do is define functions. And one of the things that's nice in anything you can define in a shell is sometimes it's nice to run another shell to execute another program or a subshell or something, and you want functions that are defined in your top-level shell to be passed on down to the lower-level shells. And so there is no magical mechanism for doing that, but Linux and Unix have the idea of the environment. So the authors of Bash thought, okay, here's a clever thing we can do. We can export these function definitions into the environment, and then when the new Bash shell starts up, it'll look for functions in the environment, and it will evaluate those and define those functions. So that when you start a Bash subshell, all the functions you exported from the parent shell are available in the one below.
Right.
Sounds like a good idea, and it's kind
quite
of a
handy
thing to have.
Sure, time saver.
Yeah, in fact, some stuff like the environment modules software used in high-performance computing to switch between different versions of like your compilers, or so if you have a tree with different, it actually uses that feature. So it's a thing that's kind of obscure, but actually used by different software. So that's all pretty good, but there's a surprising effect of it, which is that environment variables don't have any sort of like magic to them. They're just basically a string in memory, and so when the new Bash shell starts up, it just goes and looks through all the environment variables and looks for ones that have content that looks like it might be a function. It starts with the parentheses and looks like a function definition. And then it goes and evaluates that. And normally, evaluating a function definition doesn't do anything. It just defines that function. So it should be harmless even then. But the actual bug here was that once that was defined, it just kept on evaluating everything in that string. And when you evaluate something that's a command, it runs it. So there's no buffer overflow or anything, but it really should have stopped evaluating right at the end of that.
Right.
But it didn't. So that by itself, you still think, okay, but somebody had got to define those environment variables. And so this is where it comes into the question of, is this a Bash bug, or is it other programs not sanitizing the environment properly, or whatever? There's a lot of software.
Oh, you just had a little hiccup.
Right?
Yep, we got you.
Okay.
You had a little hiccup. No problem.
It turns out that there's a lot of software that basically assumes that the environment is something that's like a static thing that can be read, and what harm could happen from having the environment read, because nothing's being executed. To sanitize, if I read an environment variable and I do something with it, I better sanitize that. So this is software that does its checks, but it's not thinking to check variables that it's not even looking at, like if it's just in the environment just sitting there.
Right, it was already there when it started.
Right, and what's the harm of it just sitting there being a string in memory? No problem. But it turns out that if you if you then start a Bash subshell under there, it'll start up and it will look at all of those variables, and if any of them are defined, there you go. It executes the code if there's any extra code there.
So this is something then that has been around for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, I looked up the other day when this was started, but I forget when. It's been there. It's pretty old.
This is almost like a feature.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is a feature. It is a feature. It's documented. It's documented that Bash does this.
So this is something that was intentional. So it has been around since this was implemented, and nobody just ever thought of it?
Yeah, well, so the part where it's a feature that the environment variables keep going on. But there is a real bug in that that after the end of the definition, it's still evaluated. That's not defined as happening.
Gotcha.
So there's a real actual bug here.
Okay.
It's not just, and so again, people who are not sanitizing these
Right.
Maybe they should have been more paranoid. And some software like sudo is very paranoid about it. It does sanitize it, which is good. That was
so it's a combo. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first thing I tried when I heard about this was like, ooh, I wonder if I can exploit sudo. But no, you can't.
So what do you think? What do you think about the response? People calling it this is the next Heartbleed. Do you think it's that serious? Because when I think of Heartbleed, remember this was something where these were remote server services that were running on boxes, and the remote attacker was able to read the contents of the remote system's RAM and maybe take things like keys or credentials. This is not that. But at the same time, Bash is probably even more places than OpenSSL. So where do you think it falls down on the severity scale?
So I think there are two places, in Linux at least, where it's really scary. And one of these is the old CGI interface for running web server scripts. That stands for Gateway Interface? What does the C stand for? I don't know. It's not graphics, but Gateway Interface is definitely the second part of that. And it's basically that web servers use to run external programs to give you some sort of result. Mm-hmm. Common gateway interface, maybe. Mm-hmm. And that actually works by environment variables. Your script that's run on your server actually gets environment variables. That's the defined way that it works. And some of those environment variables come from the user, including just the GET request, like what you're trying to access. The name, the HTTP referrer, basically the name of the web browser that you're accessing with, which that's user set. The referrer, that's the page that your web browser claims that you were on previously. All of those things get passed in. And it's basically the definition that this gets passed to you from the user to the program.
Right.
So basically...
That's an opportunity to put something bad in there.
Right. And so although mostly these days people use mod PHP or something like that instead of CGI, there are a lot of servers out there still using CGI for something.
Yeah.
And, and then anytime where they use an eval statement or something that shells out to another command and bash happens to be called, there you go. Right. So and
that's actually fairly common. There's a lot of back-end web processes that are just kicking off a script on the back end to do something.
Exactly. So there's the fear that could easily be automated by a worm that find some software that would spread very rapidly. I don't know how much that's been actually seen in the wild, but I certainly see probes on my web server trying things.
So do you think it is worth calling Heartbleed? Is it something of that scale?
I think it's got the potential.
Richard Stallman released a statement saying that this is just a blip. It's not a big deal. It's just a little bump in the road, and that at least since it's open source, we caught it. What do you think about that?
I think it's good that we caught it at this point, and I think it is true that it being open source made it easy to get a fix out quickly from a lot of different areas, and kind of a collaborative fix. First fix comes out and people realize, oh wait, that doesn't fix everything.
Yeah, that was interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit? What happened there?
I don't know all of the details, but it was interesting because a lot of the times these fixes, have an embargo date, and then by the time it comes to Fedora from the Red Hat security team or somewhere like that, there's a fix ready to go. And in this case, we were kind of waiting for the people who are the security experts working for Red Hat and elsewhere to deliver a tested fix that we knew could solve it before we put out the update. Now, the first update we put out actually did correct most of the cases. Mm-hmm. The case where it evaluated and kept going and would execute things. And so that a very quick initial fix, I think, covered most of the real-world possible exploits.
Right,
so that was good.
Yeah.
But the second fix really kind of closes the whole hole. So I want to quick add another place other than web servers that things are where people are at risk, and that one is DHCP.
DHCP, right?
Because the DHCP clients basically work the same way. They get information from the network, from the DHCP server, and then they say, okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to put that in some environment variables and kick off some various scripts to configure a network.
Another real-world example I heard of one that's actually happened was like I think through an SMTP server. I think I heard of somebody reported of an attack actually happening that way.
Okay, yeah. So there are a lot of different possible attacks there. So
yeah.
I think that the first patch actually closed off a lot of this.
And I guess maybe we should point out that what the attacker would get is the privilege level of whatever the service they compromised was. So in this case, the SMTP server or a web server. So if you have Apache running as www or HTTP or Apache or whatever it is on your box, and it has limited access, then the attacker has limited access. But then would the problem be maybe like stepping it up from there and using another local?
Yeah. Dan Walsh, our SE Linux guy, has a blog post pointing out that this is a case where SE Linux does a fairly good job of containing it. It doesn't stop the exploit, but the things you can do after that are limited to things that the web server ought to be able to do.
Right.
So that really, really helps.
It also kind of shows you potentially some of the things to consider with containers on a Linux box, right? Because this could have ramifications with Docker containers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, most Docker containers, all the Fedora ones have Bash in them, and we're just trying to figure out how to... Docker doesn't really have a unified solution for delivering security updates like that. It's basically rebuild your whole stack now. There's a security update.
Yeah.
And so we've got to find a good solution to that. And I don't think anybody has one right now, but we'll come up with something. The good thing about containers is that if you do exploit Bash in a container, hopefully there's less for you to do at that point. There's fewer chances for another exploit. There's fewer other things you can run. So I think containers will help us in the future as things get more contained.
And Colin Walters blogged about potentially Project Atomic making use of using Project Atomic maybe to manage containers in a way to help with this kind of thing. Is that... Can you expand on that?
You can't even see it, but look, I'm wearing it.
Oh, nice. Well, perfect. So can you expand how Project Atomic would sort of help with something in this scenario where I have a bunch of Docker containers that maybe have a problem like this?
Project Atomic and any other kind of thing that manages the Docker containers like that has sort of a minimal environment underneath it with, again, less of a way to exploit what's going on. And then the containers are all much more self-contained and replaceable underneath, separate from the OS. I don't think that it necessarily is a magic solution to this kind of exploit, but it's just another layer of things that really helps.
Okay, very good. While we're on that track, how does... So Fedora seems to me to be in sort of a transition phase. Fedora 21, early December, sort of marks the beginning of Fedora.next, or it's the first release under this new Next umbrella, right? Is this all about to change for Fedora? Because I look at a couple of things. So we just mentioned, of course, Shellshock. Then we have Heartbleed. I'm loving these names. And there's a big rumor going on this weekend that there is a massive vulnerability in Zen that'll be announced on the 1st of October. In fact, it's rumored that's why Amazon is rebooting a whole bunch of EC2 systems over this weekend, is to patch under embargo. So I look at this and I think maybe in this post-Snowden world we're in, there's a lot more eyes on code. There's a lot more patches that are coming towards servers, and we're talking OpenSSL, we're talking Bash, we're talking Zen. These are all major server packages where the enterprise is traditionally super bad at patching. Is there some sort of solution that Fedora.next is going to have for this problem? Because I don't know what we're going to do other than need to patch a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, well, we may need to patch a heck of a lot more, at least for a while. I think one of the main things in Fedora, we focused, as a distribution, we focused a lot on packaging quality and haven't really worked very much on code quality. And especially as we start packaging more and more stuff, 14,000, 15,000, 18,000 packages, working on code quality across that becomes kind of hard. So one of the things in Fedora.next is to sort of separate out these packages into different rings of importance is the wrong word, but sort of fundamentalness. And so we can have this Fedora base operating system of several hundred packages, and we can really focus our code quality efforts on that and then expand it out. And then if we put the other stuff running in containers or running in isolated environments, we can kind of make distinctions between where, what amount of review has gone into different parts of the operating system.
The end result would be, so this, essentially, in a way, how I manage my Arch servers is I have several VMs. I have no Arch server that has more than 200 packages on it, because that's for something that's rolling and all of that, it becomes too much. So the narrower the scope of that machine, the easier it is for me to apply security updates, manage security settings, assess its vulnerabilities, and things like that. So the idea would be, is it more like Fedora.next server side recognizes that we're like in a world of plentiful virtualization and containers, so you can have more servers, and so Next is going to be like, all right, well, here's your Samba server, here's your SMTP server, here's your database server, here's your web server, and they only are those things? Am I following?
So at first I just want to say that, this isn't a Fedora-only idea at all, and Arch does this beautifully with the base and the AUR stuff, and really, it's kind of a common thread. So it's not just a Fedora idea, but we want to be involved in this because
if
really
it's a good one,
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also not just a server thing. I think we're going to see this in the Fedora workstation, and Leonard has a proposal for kind of a containerized way of constructing desktop apps, and I think that's an interesting approach. I don't know if that's going to be the one that wins and we take, or if we take some good ideas from there. But I think it's going to be kind of the same model on servers and desktops alike, where you've got more modular components that are in their own little universe talking via APIs rather than talking direct.
I like the flexibility that gives, like when I think of my past system admin life, but going back to what we just talked about, both OpenSSL and Bash, especially Bash, right? It's going to be in pretty much all of these super narrowed down, focused installations. So it still seems to me that having a really safe way for people to deploy updates is a critical part to having something that's going to be out in the cloud, quote unquote. How does Next solve that particular aspect of security?
I think our updates model works fairly well, the RPM-based updates model. And that's one of the questions. If we go to like image-based containers, we will need new models for updating and deploying those. And it's actually a thing we're talking about in Fedora right now with this Bash as a concrete example. We've got to update our Docker containers. What are our policies for doing that? Oh, we are making that up as we go along because everybody is with Docker. That's one. Our current model has worked pretty well. I know on the desktop side, a lot of the stuff is focused on when you get updates, you reboot, just because that is the safer way to do it, and make sure that all of your in-memory things are redone and everything. If we're ending up with security updates every day, that would not be tenable. So that's an interesting tension. And although we're not doing it in Fedora right now, Red Hat and SUSE both have this in-memory kernel patching thing to keep you from needing to reboot on your servers. Right. So it'd be interesting to see how those things come out together.
Yeah. I agree. I kind of actually wanted to jump from this to when something big like this happens. I know I actually don't quite fully understand the wall between Fedora and Red Hat, but I know that they're separate projects and separated out. But when something like this happens, Shellshock, that is common across both Fedora and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, how much collaboration is there between the Fedora project and the Red Hat security team? Or does the Red Hat security team do the code for the Fedora project as well? How does that split work? Is it like two teams working together, one team does the code and delivers it, hands it off? Can you explain that to me?
So the Red Hat security team's first priority is obviously Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and that's their day job for basically everybody on the Red Hat security team. The Fedora security team is distinct from Red Hat completely officially it is distinct. It happens that it is comprised of many people who happen to also work on the Red Hat security team.
Okay.
So the overlap kind of happens in that way. And the Fedora security team does work on updates and patches and those sort of things, and people outside of Red Hat as well as inside of Red Hat work on those things. When there's a huge emergency, the Red Hat security team's day job is getting the RHEL updates out, but they definitely care about Fedora, and we try to get the Fedora updates out as well. But in some cases, we do depend on community response to issues. And I think this is kind of a unique one because the Red Hat security team was actually developing a solution to the problem in real time rather than being a packaging issue. So with Heartbleed, we knew what we had to do by the time the embargo was lifted. And then it was just a matter of getting the updates out as fast as, tested and out as fast as we could. And that's a pretty easy process. Here, Red Hat, the security team basically developed the approach on the day that they were doing it and tested it. So in addition to fixing, the various problems with the overreading that were part of the bug, they actually changed the way it works in our bash. And I'm not sure if this is going to end up upstream or not. But as I was talking about the problem before, one of the fundamental issues is that you can set any arbitrary environment variable to look like a function, and then it gets read. So that's where you can set the user agent and those kind of things. So our patch that Red Hat wrote actually makes it so that only certain variable names that start with bash func are ever looked at, which makes it much, much harder, because it's easy to set some sort of environment variable related to what you're doing, and it's much harder to get a made-up arbitrary environment variable passed in. In fact, I can't think of an actual practical case where you could do that.
Okay, yeah. So what you're saying is that I guess so the answer to my question is, it almost sounds like, in a sense, the work that the Red Hat enterprise employees do officially then sort of translates to some of them who work voluntarily on the Fedora project, and they already have all that expertise and all of that knowledge in their head, and they're able to apply it to the patch towards Fedora, and it goes out pretty quickly because they're motivated to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one final question, then then the floor is open for anything else you want to touch on, but are you just surprised at the huge amount of mainstream coverage this bug has gotten? And do you think, what does that mean? I guess Linux has obviously arrived, and it's important to a lot of people. That I think I saw something on the CBS Morning News on the other day. I couldn't believe it. What do you think that means, Matthew?
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm a little surprised too. I think this trend of giving cute names to security vulnerabilities is kind of funny. It's right up there with the Weather Channel deciding they were going to name blizzards.
Right. Yes.
And I think that I thought that was kind of silly too, but it's the same kind of thing. If it helps people coordinate their response and get good response to real serious problems, it's helpful.
I guess.
I think if every vulnerability gets a silly name, it's going to get real tiresome fast.
Yeah.
And I think that this really did catch on. Heartbleed, certainly having that dramatic name helped, and the fact that it really was a most serious in 20 years kind of thing. That's what I'm hearing from security people. I've never seen anything this widespread and this awful.
Right.
And so that one was awful and had a catchy name. And so I think that people in the media, when they see something else that looks pretty serious and widespread, and it's got a catchy name, and then they ask the tech people, "Is this widespread?" And the tech people are like, "Yeah, that's pretty common." then it catches fire like that.
Yeah. I just thought that was pretty fascinating.
Well, I agree.
Is there anything else you want to touch on, Fedora related, or anything else related, or Shellshock related before we run?
Well, that's the Shellshock stuff. We have our Fedora Alpha for Fedora 21 out this week, or last week, so it made a nicely busy week.
No kidding. One of the reasons I'm really excited about Fedora 21 is I think unless I don't know about OpenSUSE, I don't know when they ship, but I think you'll be the first desktop with GNOME 3.14 out, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. On the Fedora magazine, the Shellshock posts are now the most popular posts ever. But before that, are how to get GNOME 3.12 running on Fedora 20 was the most popular post for a long time.
Sure.
So finally, we'll actually have a Fedora release with the latest GNOME in it. And I think that will be really nice for a lot of people. I've been running it on my desktop for a long time, so it's old news to me.
Yeah, we've got a Fedora 21 box in studio right now because it just happened to be one of the easiest ways to get the latest version of GNOME, plus play with all the other goodies as well. Like
Absolutely.
DNF and stuff like that. All right, well, Matthew, thank you for coming on the show and breaking this down for us, and I look forward to chatting in the future. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But, Matt, we got a little bit of business to take care of before we get out of here. So, Ohio Linux Fest is near. It is approaching. And we've put together, Albert Wester put together for us a event on Google+. If you're going to make it and you want to meet up with us at Ohio Linux Fest, as the date gets closer, we'll be organizing through this page. And you can go. We'll have a link in the show notes. I forgot. It's like bit.ly/Ohio something Linux 2014.
It'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. It'll be in the show notes. We've got 12 people going. Although some people like Matt are trolling us and saying they're going even though he's not going. Don't be like Matt.
I'm going to be, well, you know.
Trying to get a count.
Oh.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I figured it was implied.
When I saw you, yeah. I was like, oh, I know you're not going. So, because you're going to be there virtually and in spirit. And we're not even... I'm not sure. There could be the possibility that we might record that Linux Action Show. I don't know. We might record it on Monday. So what I was thinking is I might come back Sunday, edit all the stuff together, and then do an episode on Monday with all the clips from Ohio Fest. We'll figure that out as that gets closer, and we'll update the calendar. Did you know Jupiter Broadcasting has a production calendar over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar? Any schedule changes, we try to update there as soon as we figure them out. Sometimes that's minutes before the show goes live. Sometimes it's weeks in advance.
Yes.
jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. There's an RSS feed you can subscribe to as well. The best part is our robots automatically change it to your time zone. So you don't even have to do the time math, which is cool. I wanted to give an update on the Linux Action Show jacket. Oh, look at that. We crossed 250.
Nice. Nicely done, guys.
Probably by the time you're watching this show, the campaign will be wrapped up because there's 1 day, 8 hours left. If you go to teespring.com/jbjacket, you can see if it's still active. If you'd like to help fund our coverage of Ohio Linux Fest 2014, you can get yourself a fall jacket. And the boss tells me that we are now at funding of our flight. We're also giving a portion of the proceeds to the Ella and Madison Fund, so some of it's going there. But we're funding our flight, which is great because we don't really have that money out of pocket, and we could still use more help. And if there is you might have a chance, depending on when you're downloading this, teespring.com/jbjacket. And based on popular demand, we added red.
Nice.
We added red, so we now have a red Linux Action Show jacket. It's just really nice. It's a minimal logo above the breast pocket. We decided not to do like a big tacky banner on the back, and just wanted to keep it nice and clean. Something you could wear like anywhere.
All right.
But definitely to Ohio Linux Fest, and if you're not going to be there, you could still rock a jacket. Teespring.com/jbjacket.
There's still time. Get it.
And since we are talking about Ohio Linux Fest and the jackets, we'll be posting your swag pics. So when you get your jacket, email it to Angela at jupiterbroadcasting.com, and then check out Instagram.com/JupiterBroadcasting.
I don't know if anything's going to quite equate to, where I was.
You like that? So this was...
that's actually what's happening right now.
You can see there's the bonobo.
And there's the tidy whities.
And the Jupiter Broadcasting belt and the shirt. And I like that Angela's boobs are ginormous. That's great. And this is actually, that's a ball sack is what that is, because that's the male sack.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that.
Yeah,
oh,
okay.
Theater
of the mind for the audio listeners there, Matt. This is all on Instagram.com/JupiterBroadcasting. And then also, we will have an official Ohio Linux Fest 2014 sticker. That's going to be our sticker.
That's a really good sticker. I love the fact it's all got the shape and everything.
Yeah, we'll be handing that out at Ohio Linux Fest if you see us there. And Angela and I also got official business cards that we can be handing out to people. And Angela's is better than mine. Hers is manager of all the things.
I love that. I like the font choice, too. That's
really
cool.
Yeah, she got her own custom font.
That's very cool.
Trusted sidekick, swag hag, and back-end manager.
Nice. Whoa! Nice.
Back-end manager, Matt. How about that? And then also check out that fish. Yeah, and then look at that. She also just posted a teaser.
Cool.
Show and tell. Today's episode of the Faux Show. When you join the Linux Action Show live over at jblive.tv, we do the show at 10 a.m. Pacific. Following the Linux Action Show is the Faux Show. This week, we asked the audience to send in screenshots of their desktops, like their Linux rigs and stuff. So this week's episode of the Faux Show, we're going to be going through everybody's screenshots of their desktops. So check out if it sounds silly, but there is actually entire subreddits dedicated to this topic. It's pretty fun. Like you can see everybody's software setup and how they set their rig up.
Find yourself inspired and be like, oh my god, that workflow makes so much more sense than what I was doing or whatever it may be. There's so much to be inspired there.
Matt, if I want to do a little reading, maybe I could go catch some of your stuff. Where would I go?
Datamation.com. I got new articles that are going to be coming out over the course of the next couple of weeks. They're already done and in queue. Just hit the show notes and click the link. Otherwise, just go to datamation.com and open source.
Boom. Also, be sure to grab more Linux Action Show goodness in the form of Linux Unplugged, which is, I don't know. I think this show's really, now it's gone off in its own direction. It's its own beast. It just hit episode
really
59. Dead Desktop Walking. We talked about what the hell's going on with XFCE. And if Debian's recent decision to switch to GNOME as the default is sort of another nail in the coffin. We had a really good discussion around that in episode 59 of Linux Unplugged. It was really, really kind of great.
Exactly.
And, of course, we had Wimpy on there from the Mateus perspective, and it was just good all around. Also, episode 58, Cult of Community, turned out really well, too.
Yeah, both of them were really good, and it's a great town hall experience.
Yeah.
If you're like, if you find yourself screaming at the monitor when you're watching Linux Action Show, this is a show to check out as a supplement.
Yeah,
really
and
is.
we have an open mumble room. We call it our virtual lug, and we mean it. You can show up and participate in the conversation around open source and Linux, and the only qualifier is we have to be able to understand you. So we check your mic, make sure you have an okay connection, and things like that. But once you pass those things, last week we had like 25 people show up, and we worked out a system. We make it pretty manageable most of the time. I mean, I think for the scope of what we're doing, it turns out pretty damn well.
Yes.
And next week is on Tuesdays, episode 60.
Nice.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
And I'll be at my son's school like up until the minute we go on air. So that's going to be the most unplugged episodes we've had in a long time. But we have a couple of things planned, so it should be pretty good. Last but not least, if you're still jonesing, you want to help make our show better, suggest some content, give feedback, or give some insight, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. It's the engine that fuels the content for this show. Even just suggestions and comments sometimes generate ideas and topics for us. And of course, when things are going on in the Linux world, this is one of the best resources out there.
Really
linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Great conversations, submit your stories, all that stuff.
Nice UI refresh. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
I was kind of looking at that. It's like, hey, that's really tidy.
A big thank you to Michael T. or producer Rotten Corpse, a.k.a., for rolling out version 3 of the new Linux Action Show subreddit theme, including new penguin feet. You see the upvote and downvote?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it really looks good. And he's got logos here and show times and RSS feeds. It's a really good looking page.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
Is the show.
What are you gonna do, Matt? You know, you and I, we come here, we show up every Sunday. You know, I did it this morning too. Like people show up in the chat room and they're like, "Why hasn't the show started yet?"
Calendar.
And it's like 9:15, and people are like, "Why hasn't the show started?" And you know, I am honestly 99.99%. I'm a solid guy about that because I'm not good at time zone math.
Yeah, I know.
Like I'm super good about it.
There's a friggin' there's certain shows.
There's also a next command, but in the chat room.
Yeah.
But also, then I realized like this show has been on Sundays at 10 a.m. for like 6 or 7 years. Like
it's not like it's
week.
changed.
It's not like it changes ever, except for like a couple of times a year when something comes up. So like at a certain point, it's kind of like, well, how do you not just figure that out? Because it's never changed.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
it's funny. You know what?
If you're a regular live user and you live in Timbuktu and the time zone's different and whatever, odds are that time that you're watching this, whatever it may be for you, is probably the same every week.
All right, I put a link to the jacket in the chat room.
Anyway, I'm fine.
I know. You know, it's just one of those things. You know, it's time math. It's time math. And,
yeah, but it's not.
And that's true. You don't want to miss the pre-show. So that's the thing. The other thing is just show up early and catch the pre-show.
Daylight savings is fair. Okay, so you got an hour variable.
Yeah, when that happens, oh, totally, yeah. No,
okay.
And when
for those that don't celebrate it,
and I give people like a 5-month grace period on daylight savings. It's really just now that I start getting, which is almost the end of daylight savings, where we're gonna fall back, which is a ripoff. Don't even get me.
I'm so done with daylight savings.
Dude, you think daylight savings is bad? Try having 3 young children. Oh my god. It is the worst thing ever. It doesn't take a couple of days. The first time I think I remember really bad for Dylan took like a month. It took him like a month. It's the worst. Yeah. It is the worst.
I can imagine with little kids it'd be really, really tough.
They're like, what do you mean? First of all, they're not even it takes them a couple of years to like accept that time is a thing. It's like, Dad, I don't give. You made this up.
Oh no, trust me, it bleeds in well into the teen years.
Yeah, so
they don't care.
But then you go and you
they're
change.
Aware of it, they just don't.
And then you go and redefine on it what time is like a couple of times a year. Like, well, what kind of? It's the worst.
That's an interesting approach. Don't tell them. Well, I don't know how that would work other than.
Except for when it's their bedtime.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, they're able to identify the time.
Are you lying to me, old man?
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
Pretty much, yes.
That's why my 5-year-old's already like that. I think you're lying to me right now. Like, Dylan, I've never lied to you in your entire life. Why do you think I'm lying? I don't trust you. I think you're lying. It is not 8:30. It's 8:30, Dylan. No, I don't think so.
You need like a big LED clock that's like got numbers like this big on the wall.
Oh, we have it. They choose not to.
Just choose not to see.
Well, see, I got two different approaches. I got Dylan, who doesn't believe me, then once he believes, wants to negotiate another half hour on the clock. He wants to see if he can put another half hour on the clock. And then you got Abby, who just doesn't care that it's her bedtime. I don't care, Daddy. I don't care.
Well, I respect the fact that she's owning it. She's like, I acknowledge that you're correct.
Daddy,
I don't give two craps.
Daddy, I'm in the middle of this Scooby-Doo, and I'm going to finish.
Well, to be fair, she's in the middle of Scooby-Doo. I mean, that's awesome. I get it.
And then I'm like, Abby, you can finish tomorrow. She's like,
yeah.
I don't get it. Why would I do that? I want to watch it right now. So there's no winning, Matt. There's no winning.
No.
She's the boss.
That's awesome.
She's the boss. She's totally. She's a 3-year-old, and she seriously acts like a teenager.
That's awesome.
She's like, oh, Abby, you need to take a nap. No, I don't. Yeah, you need to take a nap. No, I don't. I don't need to take a nap. Yeah, you do.
She's kind of got the boundary thing figured out.
And then you put her down, and she's like, and then you go in there and you're playing like, well, Abby, why aren't you sleeping? I don't need a nap. Yes, you do.
I'm good.
Kids are like, no. So I'll be if I'm just like, it's getting late, and like sometimes I'm just up until I can put them down because I'm an old man.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking they go to bed like at 8 o'clock. So I'm a really old man. Okay.
Yeah. No,
but so I'll start dozing off, and then Abby will be like, Dad, you fell asleep.
That's not allowed.
And then or Dylan will be like, Hey, Dad, why are your eyes closed? Well, I'm sleeping. Well, why don't you go to bed? I'm waiting for you to go to bed.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
Come on, just let me sleep. Just let me sleep. So you can see here how the bacon has achieved that melt in your mouth crispy status. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Huh? Look at that, huh? Oh. Looks pretty good.